Long time no see. The Seattle Seahawks and San Francisco 49ers getting ready to battle for the second time in less than 3 weeks. Even bigger stakes than the last time. We're going to be diving into who's got the edge in a number of different departments in a grudge match between the Seahawks and 49ers coming up here on Crossover Thursday.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, 12s and Niners faithful. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. He's Brian Peacock of the Locked On 49ers podcast. And if you feel like you are in the twilight zone, no, this is a new Crossover Thursday between Locked On Seahawks, Locked On 49ers as we're gearing up for the divisional round. Two teams that just played in Week 18. San Francisco has played another team during that time. Seattle was on a bye week after winning that matchup in the season finale. We're going to be taking a deep dive into what to expect when these two very familiar foes get together once again with a berth to the NFC Championship game on the line at Lumen Field. Brought courtesy of our friends over at Prize Picks. Download Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Brian, as I just mentioned, I have the Twilight Zone music, the original Twilight Zone. I have that music playing right now because I feel like you might even have the same shirt on that we had in our last crossover just a couple of weeks ago with these teams going into Week 18, and we thought the stakes were so high. NFC West title and number one seed. Seattle wins 13-3, and now we get to see these teams duel again. And I will say this. I'm not surprised the 49ers are to this point with what they've done this year, but at the same time, it's just what a coaching job that Kyle Shanahan and his staff have done. This team just, you keep thinking they're down and out. They keep losing star player after star player to injuries. George Kittle being the latest. And they have more lives than cats do right now. This team just keeps finding ways to win, and that makes them incredibly dangerous in a playoff setting.
Yeah, it's even stranger, I imagine, for you, Corbin, because the Seahawks didn't have a game last week, earning that right by beating the 49ers. And now they're playing for the NFC the right to play for the NFC Championship after playing for the NFC West the last time. And you're right. This might be the same outfit I was wearing last time. I feel like Mr. Mom. We're using some dated references here with Twilight Zone and Mr. Mom. Do you remember Mr. Mom when he's just like,
I watched it several times as a kid. So, but maybe we're both old.
Especially this point in the season, you're like, what is happening at this point? And the 49ers just keep going. It's been an unbelievable run. And I guess the bright side of the coin for the 49ers is, A, they keep winning, and they're here in the second round of the playoffs against all odds. But that means you had a good enough team to lose multiple stars and still have some stars and still have some pretty good players and to be competitive against a team that's as good as the Philadelphia Eagles last week, and hopefully more competitive against the Seattle Seahawks this week than they were 2 weeks ago. But I'm pumped for this one. And third time is always a little bit more intense, right? I saw Jaron Reed's comments earlier today. He said, we don't like him. Personally, I don't like anything about him, he said. So I love that. They know it's at stake. It's a huge game. It's the third time division rivals, no love lost between these organizations since really both of them got really good there in the 2010s, and it's been a lot of fun since. And so it's really cool to play for the third time. And I think it gets ratcheted up, and you play the same for the guys on the field playing against the same opponent for the third time. Just saw him a couple of weeks ago. Probably some raw feelings about that game. There's probably a lot of weird talk that was happening in that game. You see him again, like, okay, we're going to see him. Juwan Jennings on the field after the game last week was asked multiple things about his touchdown pass, first of all. And then also asked about, hey, do you know who your opponent's going to be? He's like, oh, I don't know. I hope it's the Seahawks. Is it the Seahawks? And the reporter said, yeah, it's the Seahawks. And he's like, oh, man, I can't wait. So everyone's excited for this one.
Yeah, it almost feels like when players are, when they're drafted or they're signed in free agency by these two teams, or they come in and just however the player is acquired, even if they're like a week 4 practice squad signee, like it's almost like there's a blood infusion. Like you no longer like the 49ers, or you no longer like the Seahawks. Like it's not like you're born with it. It's just, hey, we're going to make you hate this rival. And it even when the 49ers were winning a bunch of games in the early 2020s, or Seattle had a stretch where they won like 10 straight games in this series in the mid 2010s, like the bad blood has always been there. And now you get to see these two teams, second time in a row that the Seahawks have played in the playoffs against the 49ers. Now they're hoping for a much better outcome. And that was such a weird game because Seattle was actually winning at halftime in that game. Geno Smith had a bomb to DK Metcalf down the sideline that put Seattle up. And it was a close game until early in the fourth quarter. And then a fumble by Geno Smith just kind of changed everything. But I think you and I would both agree this is a much better Seahawks team than the one that lost in that wild card matchup. San Francisco's got a bunch of missing pieces from that game. Not a lot of carryover for the two teams from this latest playoff matchup. But I know from Seattle's perspective going into this, there's been so many questions about the previous game and how much stock you're putting into that. And Mike MacDonald said 99.999% is going to be different in this game than from the previous one. And yet, I look at it from a standpoint for Seattle, at least, like, you don't try to reinvent the wheel. I know you just played 2 weeks ago, but it's not like you just completely scrap your game plan that worked so well. You make adjustments, you put in some subtle wrinkles, but like, what your football team is at this time of year in the postseason. I'm sure Kyle Shanahan feels that same way where, yeah, we scored 3 points. It was a rough game, but I'm not going to completely reinvent the wheel offensively either. We are going to do some little wrinkles and we're going to still lean on the thing that have gotten us to this point. And I think that's what makes a third matchup between two teams, especially when it's this tight together with these kind of stakes. I mean, it's not like the last game didn't have high stakes to it. I am really fascinated to see how these two coaching mad scientists handle this game when they just played each other a couple of weeks ago. And I'm sure Shanahan's like McDonald, where all there's stuff we didn't use in that game that we have ready to go. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some carryover, and that just makes it so fascinating.
Yeah, and certainly it's ratcheted up because this time that you're going home and there's not another game to be played even if you lose, unlike the last matchup. And then you just played, so those emotions are going to be raw. In some ways, I guess you could argue there's a little bit more advantage for the 49ers this time because they know what they're going to do much differently, and they're going to expect that the Seahawks don't change a lot because if it ain't broke, right? And so we'll see what those adjustments to the adjustments look like and what the 49ers come out with and how that looks different. And then if the Seahawks anticipate some of that and how things might look and things always change at halftime as it is, and the NFL's nuts and the parity that exists. And I think that's even multiplied with division rivals and familiar foes like the Seahawks and the 49ers. So I'm fascinated to see how this goes. And the 49ers are going to have to play a lot better. And one of the big things that I remember from, another comment actually from another Seahawks player this week was Ernest Jones. And perked my ears up a little bit because he was asked, watching the 49ers, did you see something different? And he's like, yeah, we noticed some things a little bit different, kind of smirking. And so, yeah, they noticed some things.
I'm not telling you anything else.
And the 49ers better did something different because it was not working against the Seahawks. And one of the big things is they're not going to be wearing all black uniforms. That you can get rid of those. And so those aren't going to those didn't have any points in them or any wins. The 3 points by Kyle Shanahan was the least he's had on offense since his first game as head coach in 2017 with the 49ers. So that was the only other time he only had 3 points. And to be honest with you, that game wasn't even as close as the 13-3 final score. But this game doesn't start 13-3. It starts 0-0. And we know that every game is different, has lives of its own. And so I'm really fascinated to see how this goes. And clearly the 49ers can come out with a different game plan because the one they used last time, they can scrap it. And Colton McKivitz after the game last time said, and I think this was a big part of it. He said, we got beat up. They beat us up front. They were more physical than us in that matchup. And so the 49ers are going to make sure that does not happen this time because that can't happen.
And the Seahawks are going to look at this saying, we very rarely this year had a team out physical us. So, is San Francisco going to, because I would even argue San Francisco didn't necessarily do that the first time these teams played in week one. It's not like either offense was lighting it up in that season opener either. Right. So that is going to be something to watch in the trenches. And I think it's crazy to say in the secondary, but like That's such a big part of what the Seahawks do defensively is how physical that back end is. Their corners, their safeties, and whatever position you want to call Nick Eman Worrie. That's a guy that he is the Terminator. So they've got all that physicality going for him. San Francisco is going to be trying to match that this time. And speaking of matching up, we are going to dive into all the key matchups. And again, it might seem like we've talked about some of these, but there is a potentially massive wrinkle being thrown into this that I'm sure Mr. Peacock is excited to explore. We're going to be diving into that up next here. Crossover Thursday, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On 49ers. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way, and there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make, and that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications, because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything, including your whole team being able to get calls and texts from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. It works right from your phone or computer, and you could even keep your existing number. And with Quo's smart AI tools automatically logging calls, summarizing conversations, and highlighting new steps, details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedInNFL. That's QUO.com/LockedInNFL. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Hey guys, the draft pick positions are set, at least for the non-playoff teams, and so many teams are looking for their franchise QB. Ever wish to become a pro QB getting drafted first overall by the Raiders? Well, now you can. There's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a #1 draft pick quarterback, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness, to turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the #1 QB career mode on the mobile app store, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. You can sign contracts, train and upgrade yourself, build chemistry, evolve your teammates, give input to your GM on roster moves, play the actual games in 2D, and rise through the ranks to become a pro football legend. You'll deal with all the ups and downs of a QB career, from rookie nerves to playoff drama and every choice that shapes your journey. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, has no ads, and works 100% offline. Perfect for when you want to sneak in a quick game or two on the go. Just head on over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search the Ultimate QB in the App Store. And we've got something special just for our listeners. Use the promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB, football legend QB1, it's your legacy. You're listening to Crossover Thursday Playoff Edition, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On 49ers. I'm Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. He's Brian Peacock, host of the Locked On 49ers podcast. And Brian, I think at this point, our listeners for both shows are probably, if you're a 49ers listener, you're like, man, I'm starting to feel like I'm listening to too much Locked On Seahawks, and vice versa, with all the crossovers that we've had to do.
Corbin, I got to be honest. I got some feedback last time. There was some 49ers listeners that were a little miffed at how confident you were about the Seahawks winning that game. But it turns out you were right to be confident, because the Seahawks did a number on the 49ers the last time. The 49ers are going to have to show up in this one, because that was the I think points wise, it wasn't the worst defeat of the year, but that felt like they got beat the worst in that game of every game on the 17-game schedule.
Yeah, and anybody who listens to Locked On Seahawks understands, like, hey, I'm a beat reporter. I'm not sitting here putting on, blue and green glasses. I'm just telling you what I think, and I felt really good about the Seahawks going into that game just from a football standpoint. Now, this rematch, we'll see how I feel on that front. But I want to start off,
by the way, Corbin, sorry to interrupt, that you didn't wear your green suit for this episode, by the way.
Save that maybe for Saturday. I don't know. I might go a different color for Saturday. We'll see. Look, we got to dive into the matchups. And it's crazy because we're literally less than 2 weeks apart from when these teams last met. So conventional wisdom would suggest that, hey, these matchups, you guys are just going to be reading the same script. You're going to be looking at a lot of the same characters to the story. And yes, there's truth to that. However, this is the NFL, and there's always room for drama. And I think in this case, in this instance, it's Fred Warner potentially being available for this football game. Now, I said it on Locked On Seahawks on our Tuesday show, and I'm just saying this is somebody that's been following football for my entire life. And I've also got a mom that is a family physician. So I've experienced the sports physician talk aspect of this, but a fractured ankle and a dislocated ankle coming back roughly 3 months after the injury occurred and just starting to practice in a walkthrough mode. I find it hard to believe that he is going to be able to do much, if anything, playing on Saturday night. A short week, just all those circumstances. 2 weeks to practice, NFC title game, that's a different story. But again, Brian, this is the NFL. And we know crazy things happen, and Fred Warner is one of those freaks that maybe could pull this off. So that just completely changes the complexion of this, because that's a guy you have to game plan for as an offense.
Yeah, it's out of a movie script, and Fred Warner is an absolute lunatic. In fact, he had his surgery exactly 3 months ago today as we record this. And it's a 4 to 6 month injury. And so 3 months is very early. And there were reports that his rehab was going well, and maybe he was a little bit ahead of schedule, but it was like maybe NFC Championship game, maybe 4 month mark. You'd be talking about the Super Bowl, and you have those extra weeks. And, that could be something that you start to think about. But for him to be coming back, and already shocking that they opened his practice window this week and seeing him move around. He was moving around pretty darn well. He was favoring the ankle a little bit, but I'm a little bit shocked. And Kyle Shanahan earlier on this week was like, yeah, okay, we're going to open the practice window this week, but, realistically next week, maybe he'll have a chance to play if the 49ers get to the NFC Championship game. But Fred Warner was asked about it, and he said, we're taking it day by day. I think they said last week they weren't going to open my window, and then my window is now open. So, yeah. We're just taking it day by day. So if it's up to Fred Warner, I think he's going to be out there. The doctors are going to have to keep him off the field. And I know who won't keep him off the field is Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan doesn't hold anybody back ever. If the doctors say they can go, or say it's up to the player's pain threshold and the player says he can go, Kyle Shanahan will use that player 100% of capacity. And we've seen the workload for Christian McCaffrey this year. If anybody deserved to have a little bit lesser workload, it's Christian McCaffrey. But nope, instead he actually touched the ball more than any player in the NFL this year. And so that's just the way that the things are going to go. If the doctors clear it, Fred Warner is going to say he can go, and Kyle Shanahan's not going to hold him back. So he's going to be out there. I still don't think he will be out there, but it has been pretty remarkable. And he actually already played on a broken ankle most of last year. He actually broke his ankle in week 4 last year, and then just played through it all year. And then now has an even worse broken ankle and dislocated ankle. Crazy. He's such an awesome player. If he's not moving 100%, is he still the same guy because how good he is in coverage and range? Does that limit it as well? And are you not that much different from another smart veteran player in Eric Kendricks at that point? But just having him out there, the heart and soul, having him out there at practice probably does help the 49ers in some regard, even if he doesn't play.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I want to talk about that matchup, you just mentioned it, because the clips that I have seen, he's moving well, but like you said, there's still a little bit of a hitch in that step. And Seattle, I have a feeling, especially because Clint Kubiak knows him well from the time he was in San Francisco, like I just have a feeling that might be something early on. If he plays like you would think an all-pro player, we're going to, try to stay away from him. I think there's a smart way that you can go in attack mode, though, and really see, hey, is he physically ready for this? Is he going to be able to go against our tight ends and our running backs? And, if he has to cover one of our slot guys or whatever, and how does that impact what they do schematically if he does have some limitations? So that's what makes that an intriguing matchup.
The one ankle on one side too. It's like, okay, well, look, he's got the bad ankle. He can still move well in this direction, but can he really fire off in this direction? Let's run some stuff this way.
And I look at that from a run game standpoint too, because Seattle just gashed San Francisco in that game for over 180 rushing yards, and they were having a lot of success. And I think you and I talked about this some on the episode leading up, that I thought off the edge, off tackle, that Seattle could run the football against San Francisco. And they went out and did just that. And They got their perimeter run game going to the sideline, 3rd and 17s, turning into 19-yard gains. John Lynch nearly having a coronary. Like there was all kinds of stuff on that front. But if Fred Warner's having issues moving to one direction compared to the other, Seattle's not stupid. Like Seattle's going to come out running the football to that direction and like, okay, we're going to force you to try to make these plays downhill. Hopefully Sean Payton's not listening to this conversation. I don't know if you saw that clip about him with a reporter today. But anyway, I look at that matchup thinking, yes, it's a big deal. If he's healthy and he's ready to go, that is a game changer. I find it hard to believe that he's going to be anywhere close to 100% if he does play in this game. On the flip side here, from Seattle's defensive perspective, no George Kittle, but I still look at the running backs and the tight ends, and in this case, the fullback. I guess we could call Kyle Juszczyk. I call him a full tight end because the guy just plays all those spots. I still think that is going to be a big part of how the 49ers try to run their offense. Like that is Kyle Shanahan's offense. Tongas has had some success. He had that game-winning touchdown against Seattle in week 1, but Nick Eman Worrie is healthy. And Nick Eman Worrie, I thought that he was he might have been the best player on the field for either team in that last matchup. And now you get to put him up against San Francisco's secondary tight ends, and you get to move Devin Witherspoon around. To me, San Francisco's ability to try to find some way to get some positive plays going against their tight end neutralizer and Nick Eman Worrie, and we could even mix in Tyakata coming down there some as well. Kobe Bryant's going to be healthy. The way they mix and match their safeties, I think that is such a crucial matchup for both these teams. If Seattle wants to have the same success or close to the same success as last time, I thought that was a huge reason that San Francisco couldn't get anything going. Eman Worrie was a tone setter for them on defense.
Yeah, he was awesome in that game, and he allows Seattle to play what I believe was 100% nickel against the 49ers base packages. And so when you can do that and you can still cover tight ends and running backs out of the backfield, that is an X factor. And I would imagine, and I know that he fits MacDonald's scheme really well, and he's the type of player he would draft anyway, but I have to imagine the 49ers were also on their minds when they're like, okay, we're going to go get Nick Eman Worrie because the 49ers have guys like George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey that you have to match up with every week. And he was phenomenal out there. By the way, how about this for a nugget? Nick Eman Worrie and 49ers 3rd round nickel Upton Stout are once again, and shout out to Nick Wagner, ESPN beat writer for the 49ers. They are once again the only 2 defensive backs in the 2025 NFL draft with sub 4.5 40-yard dash times and at least 20 reps on the bench press at the combine. But what's crazy is Nick Eman Worrie is about 40 pounds heavier than Upton Stout. So Upton Stout throwing up 20 reps is kind of crazy I think he's just under 5'9", 180 pounds.
If we got to remember, he's got shorter arms, though, and anybody that has bench press knows that is a benefit. Eman Worrie's got like those vulture arms, but he's still repped over 20 reps.
And it's also crazy these 2 teams are playing the divisional round and how much they're leaning on and expecting rookies to be massive factors in this game.
Oh, yeah. And, Gray Zabel and Eman Worrie, I mean, those 2, I mean, Seattle would have been comfortable picking either one of those guys with their 1st round pick, and they ended up getting both of them. And that's turned into a big part of how they've risen back to the top of the division, and in this case, the top of the NFC. San Francisco, some of it by necessities had to lean on a lot of these young guys, and that's a testament again to what Kyle Shanahan and his staff have done. Just keep rotating these guys in, and our 1st round pick is out. So it's really been an incredible coaching job. I think both these head coaches are fantastic, and I cannot wait to see these guys get into the lab and see what they can concoct here on this. For Seattle, they've had, the week off, but they didn't know who they were going to play. They were thinking Green Bay, and then Green Bay did that choke job. So now they are trying to mix and match how they're going to approach this game. San Francisco in a short weeks trying to prepare. And I can't wait to see what these coaches do. And keeping that in mind, we're going to get to some of those keys to victory and, maybe some predictions thrown in there for what to expect in this game. That'll be coming up next year in our crossover edition, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On 49ers. This episode is brought your way by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan, it makes a huge difference. And that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users for other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. Recipes are simple but feel elevated, even restaurant quality, with dishes co-created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay, and it saves you time and money. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach all the quality candidates quicker. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a higher than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Divisional Round Edition, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On 49ers. I'm Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. He's Brian Peacock, host of the Locked On 49ers podcast. I'm so excited about this contest that I'm throwing the word in different verbiages here. Anyway, round 3, second time these two teams have gotten together in less than 2 weeks, and that's just insane in today's NFL that would happen, but that's the playoff draw that we have here. And so I want to look at the drawing board in Brian Peacock's mind here for the 49ers, how the 49ers offensively come back after this big win in Philadelphia to get another shot against Seattle's #1 ranked scoring defense, what the 49ers have to do to try to even the score. In this case, win the grudge match to get to the NFC Championship when they still have odds stacked against them with all the injuries they have dealt with to this point.
Secret weapon Jake Tonjes is what the 49ers are going to have to lean on. No, I think he might be a factor in this game. And when George Kittle's been out, and we've seen it against the Seahawks in the past, that Tonjes can make some plays. Looking like Ricky Pearsall could potentially come back, even though the 49ers aren't going to have George Kittle, which is good because I think that was one thing that was a stark on offense, watching that 49ers offense against the Seattle Seahawks defense. There was no pop. There was no speed on offense for the 49ers. They need someone that can separate and make some plays down the field and perhaps create some big plays against the Seattle Seahawks, or at least allow the Seahawks to believe that someone on the 49ers offense could create a big play against them. And so that'll be big. I think defensively, this is where things are going to change more for the 49ers, which is concerning because the Seattle Seahawks defense did a number on the San Francisco 49ers offense. The Niners offense wasn't sharp. I don't expect them to run the ball well against the Seattle Seahawks, but the passing game just has to be a lot better, whether it's just different play call, different scheme, different subtleties in the way that Kyle Shanahan deploys the offense. That you've got to put some points on the board, and they were just smothered by the Seattle Seahawks defense. And if it goes the same way, then it's going to be a long day again for the 49ers on Saturday. how they can take advantage of the personnel packages of the Seattle Seahawks defense, and can they find places to go with the football is going to be a big one. And I know Kyle Shanahan's thought about it a lot, and I can't wait to see how he attacks the Seahawks, because 2 weeks ago, it didn't work at all.
Yeah, and I think the thing that could work against Shanahan, no matter how he schemes things up. Now, I do think Ricky Pearsall, his ability to win downfield and stretch the field, that could be something that changes the entire complexion of what the Seahawks are able to do defensively. But Seattle's personnel has been set up so well to be able to take away the middle of the field in the passing game. Ernest Jones had 5 picks this year. He's been fantastic and covered. Drake Thomas, 49ers fans unfortunately know his name now really well from that pick off of McCaffrey's hands. He had a couple other big hits on receivers in that game. He has been one of the big surprises for this team. And then you've got Nick Eman Worrie, and Kobe Bryant's going to be back healthy, which he's a ball hawk that can create turnovers. He didn't play in that game in week 18. They just got so many dudes that in the middle of the field can really close the separation, and they can jump passes. And that's been Brock Purdy's bread and butter ever since coming to the NFL, is dicing teams up over the middle. Seattle took that away from him for most of that game, and guys just weren't open. And we saw what Philadelphia did last week, where a lot of the game, they took that away from San Francisco's offense last weekend. And when Purdy had to throw outside the numbers, Quinion Mitchell got him twice. So I feel like Seattle, this is not as much about scheme. This is a game that's about playing with your talent advantage that you have. Take advantage of the guys you have out there and play smothering pass defense, middle of the field, force Brock Purdy to beat you outside the hashes, and don't let him get outside the pocket. I thought Seattle did a fantastic job of keeping him from running. Other than 1 or 2 scrambles he got away, he really couldn't get outside of the pocket and extend plays. Those 2 things and the tackling, I can't tell how big those third down tackles, first 2 drives, were stopping San Francisco and forcing them to punt when they hadn't been punting for the last 5 games, really set the tone. So from Seattle's defensive perspective, to me, it's not about X's and O's in this game. You can make some wrinkles in that regard. You may need to make some adjustments to what the 49ers adjustments are, but you got to play your game on defense. On the offensive side of the football, though, I feel a little bit differently going into this game, because I have a feeling the 49ers, after playing mostly 2 deep looks, and they didn't have a lot of stacked boxes in the first half. Seattle ran for 115 yards. They adjusted in the second half, and Seattle had a harder time running the football. I'm expecting San Francisco is going to try to do that a bit more, with more of their safety down. Let's get another guy up in the box, kind of like what they did against Philadelphia this past week. The risk with that is, and look, Philadelphia's got 2 absolute studs at receiver, but it just ain't working. That's why they're getting a new offensive coordinator. Seattle's passing game is much more cohesive, and the 49ers clearly were gauging, trying to take those big plays away. But how much does what Seattle did running the football potentially force Robert Saleh's hand there? And I'm looking at Sam Darnold and some play action shots. Can you get those opportunities in this game when you ran the ball as well as you did last time? I think Seattle's going to need to hit on a few more chunk plays to win this one in the passing game, because I just feel like San Francisco, somewhat by necessity, they're going to have to make some adjustments with how they handle scheme-wise. You can't let Seattle run for 180 yards again in this game. If Seattle runs for 150 plus, I don't think it's a 13-3 game. I think Seattle wins by much more than that this time around. They can't let them get that run game going. So Seattle's going to want to keep that rolling. But I think you also got to be thinking, how do those adjustments from San Francisco's defense potentially, especially now that Elijah Arroyo is going to be back this week, another guy that can stretch the field, this at the tight end position, can we get some of those shot plays because of our run game forcing their hands schematically?
Teams have tried and hit that tight end wheel against the 49ers too, and tried to put some pressure on the 49ers safety and middle of the field players. So I expect to see some of that, and teams have tried it almost weekly since about mid-season. I do think this is where this is the matchup that it comes down to, because I think the 49ers are going to score a few more points than they did last week, but you can't expect that they're going to go out there and score more than 20 points. Yeah, this might be you might have to win with 17 points on offense. You might have to win with maybe 19, 20 points on offense. And so the defense is going to have to do their job to limit the offense of the Seattle Seahawks. The big thing is tackling. They missed 18 tackles against the Seahawks. I think it was 18 missed tackles to 3 missed tackles 2 weeks ago, and they cleaned that up against the Philadelphia Eagles, which was massive. I talked about the rookie Upton Stout. He's been the best player on the 49ers defense for the last month or so. Marcus Siegel, the 5th round rookie, he came in and was phenomenal flying around. Has so much more range than Jair Brown when Jair Brown left the game with the hamstring. I think he should just start and play all game for the 49ers. The 2 rookie defensive tackles, CJ West is stout. He can take on double teams better than any defensive lineman on the squad. They were much better in contain, whether it was defensive ends or defensive backs coming down. There was one hiccup with Diamador Lenore not holding contain on a Barkley run, and then the 49ers got a lot better in the second half there. But they're going to have to stop the run first and try to put Sam Darnold in some of those third down situations. 49ers might need a turnover in this game in that sort of a situation as well. But I do expect them at least, whether it's Eric Kendricks and Garrett Wallow out there at linebacker or Fred Warner, they're going to tackle much better and make yardage tougher to get for the Seahawks ground game, which will make the game a lot more interesting, I think, this week.
Let's rather than score predictions, I always save those for my Blue Friday show, but let's just talk vibes here, because you mentioned it earlier in the show, and I know some of your listeners probably didn't appreciate some of them might have said it was cockiness. I didn't think it was. I was just telling you what I thought going into the game. And I'm curious what the vibes are for the 49ers going into this matchup, because it does feel like, especially with what happened a couple weeks ago, that sometimes those teams that have nothing to lose can be extremely dangerous, especially in a case like this. At the same time, I just can't see Mike MacDonald, especially with this rivalry, like how much these teams don't like each other. I have no reason to believe Seattle's going to be coming into this like, oh, we won 2 weeks ago, we're good to go. Mike MacDonald's not going to let that happen. I'm curious what the vibes are for you in terms of this 49ers team coming off that win in Philly and now having to go on the road again in a stadium that seems to have found its juice again. Lumen Field has kind of been reinvented back as a top venue for noise and being difficult to play in here.
Niners have been actually really good on the road, better on the road than they were at home this year, which is an interesting wrinkle to that. And I agree with everything you said there. It's a fascinating matchup. I expect the 49ers to be better. It's just a different game. And if you run them back, they're always going to be different in the NFL because the NFL is chaos. It's controlled chaos out there. The 49ers have this inner belief. They fight like hell. It's kind of their mantra at this point, and they don't care who's out there on the field. They're going to play a certain way, and they have a belief that they're going to go get this done. And I think a big cleanser for not only the 49ers, confidence, the players on the field, for the fan base to have that win on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles to remind everybody, oh yeah, anybody can beat anybody. We can beat anybody in this league. So I think that's helpful, and also getting some things fixed on both offense and defense before coming back and playing this matchup again against the Seattle Seahawks.
And I just look at it from Seattle's perspective. I think Mike MacDonald, there's some tongue-in-cheek with the 99.99% this game's going to be played out differently. Like, you have to make adjustments in this league or you get left behind. But I mentioned it earlier, like Seattle is the healthier team by a pretty wide margin going into this game, especially coming off of a bye. And they've been playing such great football. They haven't lost since they lost to the Rams in Week 11, a game that they easily could have won, had opportunities to win that game. They haven't lost since then. So they are rolling with an incredible amount of momentum. And, I don't know how to feel about who's going to win this one. It's a little different than last time. I think Seattle should win, but I also know that this is the playoffs, as we saw last week. Like, anything can happen in these win or go home games. And I have enough respect for Kyle Shanahan to believe that he's going to have something up his sleeves to make this a much more competitive game than the last one. And so we'll see. I'm still confident Seattle can get through this game. But I also have an incredible amount of respect for San Francisco. And, I expect this to be a closer game than what we saw at Levi Stadium the last time around. So we'll leave it at that, because on our Friday shows, I'm sure that we'll be talking about predictions respectively on Locked On Seahawks and Locked On 49ers. Anyway, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Brian at BD Peacock as well. Make sure to check out Locked On Seahawks and Locked On 49ers on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast, to make sure you don't miss a single episode, including our Friday shows heading into Saturday's pivotal divisional round matchup. Thanks for listening in. Enjoy the game coming up on Saturday, and make sure to listen to our Friday episode as well. Go Hawks, go Niners.